All right, time now for our weekly 10-minute war with our good friend Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. He himself has a fantastic college football channel here on YouTube covering the gamut of the entire country. Good to see you again, my friend. And we're going to break a little protocol this week. We don't have too many opportunities to discuss Buckeye football defeats here on Michigan Podcast. So when one presents itself, of course, we will take full advantage. So on behalf of every Michigan fan watching that wants to rubberneck the scarlet and gray for a change, what happened to the Buckeyes on Saturday against Oregon?
Post-Michigan win, post-Ohio State loss. Have we ever spoken under these circumstances? You talk about
No.
breaking protocol. I don't know what to do
Yes.
with myself. I'm not going to be able just to smirk and chuckle and brush aside these issues and say, oh, that's a Michigan problem. There is a real problem, Steve, when the entire defense breaks down. Typically, when you see defensive breakdowns, you can point to that corner, that second or third corner we have is really weak. You know, the Michigan problems last year at cornerback, for example, but you still had Daxton Hill, Aiden Hutchinson, and other strong players. Nobody is playing defense for Ohio State. Nobody showed up for the most part against Minnesota, aside from a few outstanding plays, Zach Harrison in particular. Then comes this Oregon game. Nobody showed up. It took until the final two drives of the game, in which, ironically, Ohio State could not be stopped on offense, only shooting itself in the foot in the red zone, couldn't be stopped from a yardage standpoint in moving the ball up and down the field the entire game. But once the Ohio State defense finally made a couple stops, finally put a little bit of pressure on Anthony Brown, forced a few errant throws, stopped the running game just a bit to get those two stops at the end of the game, the offense bogged down. But it is alarming when you know the secondary's bad. We've got a new set of linebackers. People weren't satisfied with the old linebackers, even though they were NFL draft selections. They were too slow, weren't athletic enough, but at least they were experienced and in the right spots. Now you got new linebackers who don't know where they are. You've got a vanilla scheme that when it's not working, here's shades of Don Brown. The defensive scheme not working the entire game and not doing anything. When the four can't get there, don't you bring more? Isn't that the old adage? And they could not get any defensive pressure. The defensive line was supposed to be the nail that held down this defense while the linebackers and the secondary was being developed early in the season, but the defensive line was non-existent. And when one play works 3 to 4 times for 20 and 30-yard gains, you would think that they would at least coach up the defense to counter that one play. Basically, Oregon ran a running play to the left side, Steve, where they brought the tight end in motion, so that would clear one defender to send them to the opposite side of the formation. And then they would crash down the wide receiver, and he would just form a wall, and the whole left side of the defense was, or the left side of the offense was wide open for 20 and 30-yard running plays with the same exact play. It was arguably the worst defensive performance I've ever seen from Ohio State, ever.
So we're talking about a defense last year, Mark, that was the worst in school history in scoring defense, but did pressure the quarterback fairly well. So a lot of it was just kind of chalked up to inexperience in the secondary, and a lot of thought that Kerry Coombs came in, obviously in a COVID year, could not install the fullness of an NFL defensive scheme where he comes from. And so they just ran a lot of base 4-3, regardless of what the other team did. And that meant linebackers on slot receivers. And sometimes that would get exploited. But as we saw with Devonta Smith in the national championship, but overall, since most of Ohio State's opponents didn't have the firepower to match them on the other end, it wasn't a big deal. And the anticipation was, with an entire and regular offseason to prepare, that a more technically sound defense would be installed. I thought last year's Ohio State defensive weaknesses were really not something most teams, even the better teams in the Big Ten, were built to exploit. This year, I totally disagree. I mean, if you can't hold up at the point of attack now, and it's been two dramatically different styles of offense between, you've got Minnesota running a Jim Tressel offense, basically. That's BJ Fleck's a disciple of his. And then you've got Oregon, running more of a finesse style of offense spread, even though they have a very physical offensive line. And you have the same getting gashed up front. That now sounds systemic. And if you can't hold up at the point of attack in our league, And now if you're asking Penn State and dare I say Michigan, now even you don't have to automatically score 38 to beat Ohio State. Now if it's 28 or 31, because you can limit the possessions in the game by dominating up front. I think that does bring them a little bit back to the pack. Am I wrong on that? Am I just wearing maize and blue colored glasses, Mark?
I can't imagine all of these players are underachieving. Everybody on the defense is a 4 or 5 star. Everyone. They have 3 5-star defensive linemen. They have almost as many 5 stars on their defensive line as the entire conference has on its rosters. And nobody's making plays. They forced no turnovers. They got no negative plays in the backfield, one late in the game. And they finally had a pass breakup at the line of scrimmage. JTT, the number 1 player in the nation, the recruits who's only been on campus for a month, finally batted a pass that was key to getting a stop late in the game. So I've got to point at, the defensive scheme, the defensive concepts and coordinators, because I just can't believe that all of these guys are underachieving to this degree. And another worrisome component to all this is Josh Proctor, their
Right.
leading safety, who's not a great player, but he knows what he's doing. He calls the defense. He gets everybody lined up. He's out for the season. He's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a worrisome thing because his replacements were lost.
And that would make a defensive coordinator very hesitant to provide more of a detail or nuanced style of defense when the guy who makes sure you're lined up properly is gone. Yeah. So those are some interesting meetings going on at the Woody Hayes football complex this week for sure.